The phone rang at 6:47 a.m. On the other end, a landlord, not her landlord, a landlord who was about to call the newspapers. And the woman on the line, she wasn't some broke tenant in a Florida strip mall. She was the Attorney General of the United States. And she was begging, not for policy, not for national security, for $20,000 rent money to a convicted pedophile. That was Sarah Ferguson. But here's the question you're not supposed to ask. What happens when the person holding the leash is the one who just got fired? What happens when Pam Bondi, Trump's attack dog, his fixer, his loyal soldier, gets thrown to the curb? She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. And what's coming for her isn't just karma.
It just keeps getting worse and worse for Pam Bondi, hit with instant karma. And this should be a massive warning to others in the Trump regime that get fired by Donald Trump. There is a life outside of the cult, outside of the regime, and your conduct has...
It's a catastrophe, a slow motion, legal, ethical, and political catastrophe that should terrify every single person in the MAGA regime. Because if they can do this to Bondi, they can do it to you. Let's start with the fear. The real fear, not the culture war nonsense, not the trans athlete panic, the kind of fear that keeps you up at 3 a.m. staring at your ceiling. For the last 14 months, Pam Bondi ran the most politicized Justice Department in American history. She didn't enforce the law, she enforced loyalty. She didn't protect the Constitution, she protected one man, Donald Trump. And here's the absurdity that the media refuses to say out loud. Bondi wasn't just incompetent, she was aggressively incompetent. She took an institution built on 250 years of precedent, prosecutorial independence, ethical walls, the simple idea that justice should be blind, and she gouged its eyes out with a rusty spoon. She fired career prosecutors for telling the truth to judges.
By the way, 99% of the comments were virulently negative about this rule, but I think everyone expects they will issue it anyway, and that's why they wanted to get the complaints in under the gun. It's actually a bit of a reminder of the first indications of what an atrocious attorney general she was. It's kind of interesting though, because you could have said you ain't seen nothing yet, because the very worst, all the reprisal prosecutions were still to come. These were, one, the firing of Erez Ruveni, who's now a whistleblower for the great sin of telling the truth to a judge, and she specifically chastised him for not supporting Trump. And then second, the chief of the criminal division in Washington was ordered to do this EPA investigation. I can't do that. It's against the principles of prosecution. She resigned. And then finally, remember the notorious example where it was really Emile Beauvais, but the complaint says you're the boss and the ethical regulations say you're responsible. Basically forced the whole public integrity section into a room and said somebody is going to dismiss this case against Mayor Adams, essentially lie and call it not a righteous case, or I'll fire everyone. So that really it's the very first heavy-handed kind of, boot on the neck acts from...
She forced the public integrity section into a room and told them to lie about the Mayor Adams case or else. She rewrote DOJ rules specifically to shield herself and her boss from state bar accountability. And she did it all with a smile, with that frozen Stepford wife grin that said, "What are you gonna do about it?" Well, here's what they're going to do about it. Because Bondi made one fatal miscalculation. She assumed Trump would protect her forever. She assumed the cocoon of power would never break.
Consequences. Now, I did a video over the weekend with Harry Littman about how these United States attorneys throughout the country were rejoicing and celebrating and throwing out the photo of Bondi. And now we're learning, though, lots of powerful lawyers, lots of lawyers with the best reputations across political parties, ideologies, who saw Pam Bondi rip to shreds the Justice Department, and they are saying, look, now that you're not being protected by the Justice Department anymore, now that you're not the AG, some of the kind of norms that you can kind of dodge and duck ethics investigations or try to claim, well, I'm an active, I'm the active AG, you can't touch me. That's gone. You are private citizen Pam Bondi right now. And so,
But Trump doesn't keep loyal soldiers. He uses them and then he discards them. Just ask Mike Pence, just ask Jeff Sessions, just ask the dozens of former allies who now warm seats on cable news begging for relevance. Bondi got fired, not quietly, not respectfully. She got the same humiliating exit that every Trump loyalist gets the moment they're no longer useful. And now she's a private citizen, and private citizens don't have sovereign immunity. Private citizens don't have DOJ lawyers to shield them from depositions. Private citizens don't have the luxury of saying, I'm too busy running the country when a congressional subpoena lands on their doorstep. So let me paint you the nightmare scenario, the one that should make every Trump appointee wake up in a cold sweat. There is now a formal 23-page ethics complaint filed against Pam Bondi with the Florida bar. This isn't some fringe activist group. This is the Lawyers Defending American Democracy, a coalition that includes distinguished former judges, prominent ethics professors, and lawyers who have practiced across both political parties. They are not asking for a slap on the wrist. They are asking for sanctions. They are asking for an investigation into whether Pam Bondi should be allowed to practice law.
a very prestigious group called the Lawyers Defending American Democracy, the LDAD, and coalition partners filed an ethics complaint against Pam Bondi recently. And this is their release that they put out. Lawyers Defending American Democracy and a broad coalition, including Democracy Defenders Fund, Lawyers for the Rule of Law, distinguished former judges, and prominent ethics professors and lawyers have filed a detailed ethics complaint against Attorney General Pam Bondi in Florida, where she is admitted to practice law. The 23-page complaint seeks an investigation by the Florida bar and sanctions for unethical conduct. The complaint alleges on Ms. Bondi's first day in office, she sent a memo to all Department of Justice employees that place lawyers who work for the DOJ in an untenable position, possibly violate their own ethical obligations, or comply with her directive. The complaint focuses on 3 recent cases in which lawyers were terminated or forced to resign as a result of demands made either by Ms. Bondi or a member of her senior management team. These demands would have required these lawyers to take actions that violate their own obligation to the rules of professional responsibility. The complaint identifies and explains in detail the ethical rules that were violated in each.
In the state of Florida, ever again. And the complaint isn't based on speculation. It's based on 3 documented cases, 3 instances where Bondi personally or through her senior management team demanded the DOJ lawyers violate their ethical obligations, their sworn duty to the court, their oath. And when those lawyers refused, they were fired or forced to resign. That is not governance. That is a crime syndicate wearing flag pins. But wait, there's more, because the ethics complaint is just the appetizer. The main course? The deposition. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Pam Bondi, not acting Attorney General Bondi, not former Attorney General Bondi.
Such instance. Now, as this distinguished bipartisan group filed the ethics complaint there, the Democrats are making it very clear. You need to show up for your deposition in the House of Representatives on April 14th. You were subpoenaed as Pam Bondi. You're still Pam Bondi the last time we checked, even though you don't hold the title of Attorney General. And if you made Hillary Clinton sit for your deposition, you've got to show up at this deposition that's coming up. Now, Pam Bondi doesn't really have the immunities and protections anymore that she may otherwise have been able to invoke if she was the acting attorney.
Pam Bondi, the person, and the date is April 14th. That's days away. And here's the detail that makes this a genuine geopolitical catastrophe for the Trump world. The Democrats are not going to ask softball questions about her favorite ice cream flavor. They are going to ask about the Epstein files. They are going to ask about the cover-up. They are going to ask about why certain documents were redacted, why certain names were protected, why certain powerful people never faced accountability. But here's the question that nobody is asking, the question that is actually the most dangerous of all, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. Ben Masalis, the host of the Midas Touch Network, put it perfectly. He said, "I want to know from Pam Bondi how she communicated with Donald Trump. I want to know if it was text message, encrypted apps, direct messages. What numbers does he use? How are cabinet-level people speaking with Donald Trump?" Think about that for a second. If Bondi is forced to answer those questions under oath, and she will be because the subpoena has the force of law and she no longer has DOJ protection, then the entire architecture of Trump's shadow communications network could collapse. We're talking about the Presidential Records Act, we're talking about classified information, we're talking about potential obstruction of justice. Bondi doesn't just hold the keys to Epstein's secrets, she holds the keys to Trump's private, untraceable, off-the-books communication system.
Important things that Democrats are going to be asking Pam Bondi at this deposition about her connection with the Epstein files is frankly something that isn't getting enough attention. Obviously, we want to know about the cover-up for sure. The thing that I really want to know, especially in light of our reporting last week about how Donald Trump got an opinion from the Department of Justice, an unlawful opinion, saying the Presidential Records Act doesn't apply. And it's unconstitutional, and he doesn't have to follow it, so he could just shred all of the documents. I want to know from Pam Bondi how she communicated with Donald Trump. I want to know if it was text message, encrypted apps, direct messages. I want to use her, in addition to asking all the important questions about the Epstein cover-up, which should be asked. But I would like to see one member of Congress ask the types of questions that we would call PMK or PMQ questions, person most knowledgeable. How are cabinet level people speaking with Donald Trump? What numbers does he use? And I want to build that out. I think that's something that needs to be asked. Those are more boring questions, but to me.
And now she has to sit in a room with congressional investigators who have every incentive to make her talk. This is the part that should terrify every single person in the Trump administration, every political appointee, every loyalist who thought they could break the law and walk away. Because Bondi is about to learn a lesson that Donald Trump has never learned. Actions have consequences. Not just political consequences, not just media consequences, real, legal, professional consequences. She could lose her law license. She could face contempt of Congress.
Files. Let's take a look at what he said. Let's play this clip.
Bondi lost her job, though, because she was not successful in that pursuit.
You read the same exact communication from the president that I did. Pam Bondi is a trusted friend of President Trump's, will remain so. And no, nobody has any idea why the Attorney General is no longer the Attorney General and I'm the acting Attorney General, except for President Trump.
That's reassuring. What about her deposition? Is the Department of Justice going to try to invoke some privilege or immunity to block her deposition on Epstein? Let's play it.
Now former Attorney General Bondi was facing a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee. Do you expect that she will comply with that, or will this administration, will the Justice Department invoke some sort of privilege to block her from testifying?
So look, as everybody knows, the Attorney General and I went to the House Oversight a few weeks ago. We answered every single question asked for a couple hours. What happens now that she's the former Attorney General and there's the subpoena out there is I think I'll leave to Chairman Comer and others to figure out. I don't have an answer to that.
You won't be invoking a privilege or anything.
Excuse me?
You won't invoke any kind of privilege to block her.
No, I definitely did not say that. I said I will leave it to Chairman Comer to work out with others. I just don't have an answer for you, but I'm not committing to anything. I'm just saying I don't know.
If she refuses to testify, she could be referred for criminal prosecution if she lies. And the most beautiful irony, the most poetic, gut-punching, absurdly perfect detail, she spent 14 months weaponizing the Justice Department against Trump's enemies. And now the exact same machinery, the subpoenas, the depositions, the ethics complaints, the public humiliation is coming for her. She thought she was the hunter. She was always the prey. She just didn't know it until Trump fired her. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. Hit pause if you have to. Scroll down to the comments and tell me this. Do you think Pam Bondi actually shows up for that deposition on April 14th? Or does she pull a Steve Bannon and just dare Congress to arrest her? I want to see your predictions because the comment section is where the real intelligence lives. Drop your take right now and then come right back because we're about to pivot from the serious threat to the ridiculous distraction. And trust me, it gets so much weirder. Now, let's talk about the circus, because you cannot understand the Bondi disaster without understanding the absolute absurdity of the MAGA universe. This is a political movement that gave a fake Man of the Year award to a guy who sells gold sneakers and digital trading cards of himself in a superhero costume. This is a movement that spent 6 weeks screaming about a legal doctrine they couldn't pronounce, unitary executive theory, while simultaneously demanding that the same executive branch stop investigating their favorite criminals. The cognitive dissonance is not just strong, it is industrial grade. And here's where Bondi fits into the comedy of errors. For 14 months, she was the straight face, the serious one, the former prosecutor, the attorney general who was going to restore integrity to the DOJ. Remember that? Remember the press release, the photo ops, the solemn promises about rooting out corruption? It was all theater. All of it, because the moment Trump snapped his fingers, Bondi dropped every principle she ever claimed to have. She fired a whistleblower for telling the truth to a judge. She ordered the dismissal of a legitimate corruption case against Mayor Adams, a case that career prosecutors said was solid because Trump wanted Adams's loyalty on immigration. She proposed a rule change that would have made it nearly impossible for state bars to discipline DOJ lawyers for unethical conduct. That's not justice, that's a protection racket. And the most pathetic part, the most fragile, insecure, deeply embarrassing part, she did it all for nothing. Trump didn't protect her. He didn't even give her a landing pad. Other loyalists, Alina Habba, for example, got cushy roles inside the administration. Bondi got a pink slip. She got a thanks for your service tweet that was probably drafted by an intern. And now she's out there, presumably telling anyone who will listen that she has a great private sector job waiting. Sure she does, because nothing says high-demand legal talent like a 23-page ethics complaint and a congressional subpoena for your involvement in an Epstein cover-up. That's not a resume builder, that's a radioactive anchor. Let me take you to a moment of pure, unfiltered absurdity. Todd Blanche, the new acting attorney general, his first official press conference, and a reporter asks him a very simple question. Did Pam Bondi lose her job because she wasn't successful in prosecuting Trump's political foes, or because she botched the cover-up of the Epstein files? Now, a normal human being would say that's a ridiculous conspiracy theory, but Blanche doesn't say that, because he can't, because the truth is too close to the surface. Here's what he actually said, and I want you to listen to the evasion.
Talk to us about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, she was in this kind of cocoon where it had one rule and one rule only, loyalty to Trump. Now she's in the open field, as it were, and at every turn, there really are people who have the knives out. Now, an important part, you're 100% right, Ben, about how eminent this group is that's filed the ethics complaint. What's interesting is it's just a submission of something they had filed back in June. And we got a kind of double speak from the Florida bar at the time. Were they investigating? Were they not? And I think the reason they did it so precipitously is because the comment period has now closed on this rule that Bondi herself proposed to try to keep state bars from having effective discipline against department attorneys. And I think
The verbal gymnastics, the sheer pathetic inability to give a straight answer. Quote, "You read the same exact communication from the president that I did. Pam Bondi is a trusted friend of President Trump's and will remain so. And no, nobody has any idea why the Attorney General is no longer the Attorney General and I'm the acting Attorney General, except for President Trump." Did you catch that? Nobody has any idea, except the president, who won't say. So the official position of the United States Department of Justice is that the firing of the Attorney General, the second highest law enforcement officer in the country, is a mystery, a riddle, an unsolvable puzzle. That is not governance. That is a sitcom. That is the kind of answer you give when you're hiding something so obvious that the only way to avoid saying it is to pretend you've lost the ability to form coherent sentences. And then the reporter asks a follow-up, a killer follow-up. Will the DOJ invoke privilege to block Bondi from testifying about Epstein? And Blanche says, and I quote, "I will leave it to Chairman Coomer to figure out. I don't have an answer to that." Then the reporter presses, "You won't invoke any kind of privilege to block." And Blanche says, "No, I definitely did not say that. I'm not committing to anything." Let me translate that from political weasel to English. We might invoke privilege, we might not. We'll decide based on what's most politically convenient in the moment, and we will never ever give you a straight answer because the truth would destroy us. That is not leadership. That is a toddler hiding a broken vase behind his back while saying, "I don't know what happened." Here's a detail that you probably missed because the corporate media buried it. When Bondi got fired, United States attorneys across the country celebrated. Not quietly, not behind closed doors. They literally took a photo of Bondi, a glossy official portrait, and threw it in a trash can. And then they took a picture of the trash can. And then they sent that picture around, to each other, to reporters, to anyone who would see it. That is not professional disagreement. That is visceral contempt. These are prosecutors, career lawyers who spent decades building cases, who took oaths to the Constitution, who watched Bondi burn their institution to the ground, and they are literally dancing on her grave. Think about what that means. The people who know the most about how the Justice Department works, the people who saw Bondi's corruption up close, the people who had to choose between following her illegal orders or losing their jobs, they are not sad she's gone. They are relieved. They are euphoric. They are throwing her face in the garbage. And that tells you everything you need to know about the legacy Pam Bondi leaves behind. She didn't reform the DOJ. She didn't drain the swamp. She turned the most powerful law enforcement agency on earth into a personal loyalty testing service for a failed casino owner with a spray tan. And now she gets to enjoy the consequences. Now we get to the part where the serious threat and the ridiculous distraction collide, where the open loop mystery reveals itself. Because here's what nobody is connecting out loud. Bondi's downfall is not an isolated event. It is a pattern, a blueprint, a warning. Donald Trump does not keep loyalists. He burns through them. And every single person in his orbit, every cabinet secretary, every political appointee, every sycophant who smiled for the camera while he shredded the rule of law is exactly one firing away from Pam Bondi's fate. Let me give you the investigative link, the thing the mainstream media refuses to say. Trump's entire political identity is built on a lie. The lie that he is strong, that he is decisive, that he protects his people. In reality, he is the most fragile, insecure, emotionally stunted man to ever occupy the Oval Office. He doesn't keep loyalists because he values loyalty. He keeps them because he needs constant validation. The moment you stop being useful, the moment you stop telling him he's the greatest president in history, you are garbage. You are a photo in a trash can. You are a 23-page ethics complaint with no one to defend you. And Bondi, she was useful for exactly 14 months. She did his dirty work. She weaponized the DOJ. She covered for his friends. She attacked his enemies. And then Trump woke up one morning, read something he didn't like on Fox News, and decided she had to go. No explanation, no transition, no thank you for your service phone call. Just a tweet, or a text, or whatever encrypted app he uses to communicate with the people who still matter to him. Bondi doesn't matter anymore, and neither will anyone else. Here's the piece of the puzzle that connects Bondi's corruption to the broader MAGA catastrophe. Remember that rule change I mentioned earlier, the one Bondi proposed that would have made it nearly impossible for state bars to discipline DOJ lawyers? It's not just an obscure procedural tweak, it is a confession, a written, documented, publicly available confession that Bondi knew exactly how unethical her conduct was. She knew that career prosecutors would try to hold her accountable. She knew that the Florida bar, her home state bar, had jurisdiction over her law license. So she tried to change the rules. She tried to build a wall between her misconduct and the consequences. And she failed. The comment period closed. Over 99% of the public comments were negative, viciously negative. Legal scholars, former judges, practicing attorneys, even some Trump-appointed officials said the rule was an abomination. And Bondi's response? She ignored them. She was going to issue the rule anyway, because that's what authoritarians do. They don't listen to feedback. They don't care about process. They just issue decrees. But here's the beautiful, catastrophic, karma-driven twist. Bondi doesn't control the Florida bar anymore. She's not the Attorney General. She can't issue rules. She can't hide behind DOJ immunity. The ethics complaint that was filed against her, the 23-page document that details every violation, every ethical breach, every moment she chose Trump over justice, that complaint is now being processed by the very institution she tried to neuter. And the Florida bar has every reason to make an example of her, because she tried to destroy their power, because she treated them like an obstacle instead of a partner, because she thought she was above them. And nothing makes a professional licensing organization angrier than someone who thinks they don't have to play by the rules. Now let me open the loop that will keep you up tonight, the question that every journalist should be asking, but almost none are. Why did Bondi redact the Epstein files? Not how did she redact them, why? Because the Epstein case is closed. The main perpetrator is dead. The victims have been identified. The only reason to redact anything at this point is to protect someone powerful, someone who is still walking free, someone who paid the right lawyers, someone who made the right phone calls. And Bondi was the gatekeeper. She controlled what the public saw. She controlled which names stayed hidden. She controlled the narrative. And now she has to testify about it, under oath, without DOJ protection, without Trump's lawyers whispering in her ear, without the ability to plead the Fifth without looking guilty as sin. The deposition is scheduled for April 14th. That is not a rumor. That is not speculation. That is a fact. The House Oversight Committee issued the subpoena. Bondi has received it. Her lawyers are probably panicking as we speak. And the question that will define the next chapter of American political history is this: will she show up? Will she raise her right hand?
In terms of the subpoena, you're 100% right. It's to Pam Bondi, and there's no specific reason. What Blanche said was always kind of a canard. Oh, well, we went there and answered questions. Not under oath, you didn't. And the Dems said outright, we don't trust Pam Bondi. We don't think what she says is right. We want her to raise her right hand. And they actually left that voluntary interview because she refused to commit to the subpoena. So there's going to be a high noon showdown for the 14th.
Will she answer the questions about encrypted apps and Epstein redactions and the rule change that was designed to protect corrupt lawyers? Or will she do what Trump always does when the heat gets too intense? Will she run? Will she hide? Will she claim some novel interpretation of executive privilege that no court has ever recognized? I don't know the answer, but I know what you think. And I know what I think, and that's why you need to stay in the comments. Second comment call to action, and this one is serious. Scroll down right now. Tell me, if you were on that House Oversight Committee, what is the one question you would ask Pam Bondi? Not the polite question, not the safe question, the question that would make her sweat, the question that would expose everything. Write it in the comments. Let's build the single most aggressive deposition script in congressional history together, right now. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, the moral justice moment, the comparison that exposes the MAGA movement's soul-rotting, intellectually bankrupt, spiritually empty hypocrisy. You ready? Here it is. When Donald Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts in New York, the entire MAGA universe lost its collective mind. They screamed about weaponization. They screamed about witch hunts. They screamed about a two-tiered system of justice. And then they did something truly revealing. They compared Trump to a plumber. I'm serious. The argument went like this. If a plumber made a mistake on his taxes, they wouldn't send him to jail. Why are they sending Trump to jail? Leaving aside the fact that Trump didn't make a mistake on his taxes, he committed 34 felonies, the comparison was always absurd, but it revealed a deeper truth about the MAGA worldview. They believe that powerful people should be held to a lower standard than regular people, that the rules don't apply to them, that justice is for the little guy, not the guy with the private jet and the gold toilet. Now let's apply that same logic to Pam Bondi. Let's do the plumber test. Imagine you are a plumber in Florida. You have a state license, you take an oath to follow the ethical rules of your profession. One day, your boss tells you to do something illegal, to lie to a customer, to cover up a safety violation. You refuse. Your boss fires you. And then your boss, the person who gave the illegal order, goes on to become the head of the entire plumbing regulatory agency. And while she's in that position, she tries to change the rules so that no plumber can ever be disciplined for following her illegal orders. Then she gets fired, and then a group of distinguished master plumbers files an ethics complaint against her. What happens to that plumber? She loses her license, she gets fined, she gets publicly shamed. She never works in plumbing again. Now apply that to Bondi. She is the plumber. She is the one who gave the illegal orders. She is the one who tried to change the rules to protect herself. And she is the one who now faces an ethics complaint that could end her career. So here's my question. The question that should make every MAGA supporter choke on their own rhetoric. If a plumber deserves to lose his license for this behavior, why doesn't Pam Bondi? Where is the outrage? Where is the lock her up chanting? Where is the moral clarity? The answer is painful but simple. There is no moral clarity. There is only tribalism, only loyalty, only the desperate, pathetic need to defend your team no matter how corrupt they become. The MAGA movement doesn't believe in justice, it believes in power. And power, as Pam Bondi just learned, is a loan, not a gift. And the lender always comes to collect. Let me hit you with another hypocrisy layer, one that the progressive media is too afraid to touch. Pam Bondi built her entire political identity as being a tough woman, a fighter, a role model for conservative girls. She posed with power suits, she smiled through scandals, she talked about breaking glass ceilings, and then she spent 14 months protecting a man who has been accused of sexual assault by over 22 women, a man who bragged about grabbing women by their genitals, a man who was found liable for sexual abuse by a jury of his peers. Bondi didn't just enable that man, she weaponized the Justice Department for him. She fired women who told the truth. She silenced whistleblowers who tried to hold him accountable. She was not a feminist icon. She was a handmaiden, a useful idiot, a woman who traded every shred of her credibility for a seat at a table that was always going to be pulled out from under her. And now she gets to experience what so many women who crossed Trump have experienced: the humiliation, the dismissal, the cold, sudden realization that you were never a partner, you were never an ally, you were a tool, and tools get put back in the drawer when the job is done. The only difference is that Bondi had a choice. She could have said no, she could have resigned, she could have been a whistleblower herself. Instead, she doubled down, she went all in. And she lost. That is not a tragedy. That is a consequence.
It is of a piece. Thanks for mentioning our weekend conversation and the Pam Bondi portraits in the wastebasket. She's, now really, it's a whole new game for her. She's in the open field. She says there's some great private sector job waiting for her. She didn't even get, as did others, Alina Habba and the like, the kind of cushy landing pad within government. She's somehow going out to the private sector, but she's going to be, I think, fighting the consequences of her Faustian bargain for 14 months, breaking the law, breaking constitutional norms, not doing justice without fear or favor to placate and please Donald Trump. And now the time has come for her to face the music, and this one is just the sort of first overture of what's going to be a whole symphony of complaints against her.
So here we are, at the end of the road. Pam Bondi thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. The ethics complaint is filed, the subpoena is waiting, the deposition is days away, the Florida bar is watching, the media is finally paying attention, and Trump has already moved on. He's already found a new loyalist, a new attorney general, a new face to smile for the cameras while he burns the next institution to the ground. Bondi is yesterday's news, a footnote, a cautionary tale that no one in the MAGA world will ever tell because it reveals too much about the monster they serve. But here's the thing. Bondi is not the story. She never was. The story is the system. The story is the rot. The story is the quiet, creeping realization that the institutions we trusted to protect us, the Justice Department, the FBI, the Congress, the legal profession, are only as strong as the people who staff them. And when those people choose loyalty over law, when they choose power over principle, when they choose a fragile, insecure, vindictive man over their own oaths, the system breaks. And it doesn't break dramatically. It doesn't break with a bang. It breaks with a memo, an email, a rule change, a quiet firing, a photo of a portrait in a trash can. So here is my final question. The question I want you to sit with. The question I want you to answer in the comments before you click away. If you were Pam Bondi right now, if you were sitting in a room somewhere in Florida, watching your career collapse, watching your legacy turn to ash, watching the subpoena sit on your kitchen table, what would you do? Would you show up on April 14th? Would you raise your right hand and tell the truth? Would you finally, after 14 months of lying, choose justice over loyalty? Or would you take the Steve Bannon path? Would you refuse? Would you hide? Would you let them arrest you just to prove that you're still a fighter? I don't know what she'll do, but I know what she should do. And so do you, because you've been watching, you've been paying attention, you've been awake while the rest of the country scrolled past. And now it's your turn to speak. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what Pam Bondi should do. Tell me what you would do. And then share this video with one person who still thinks the Justice Department is working the way it's supposed to, because the only way out of this catastrophe is through it, and the only way through it is together. I'll see you in the comments.